Alrighty, we need 34 inches at the waist. I think this is just shy of it. Oh, great. What am I knocking over? Everything? Alrighty, let's see. 17 and a half times 2 is 35. So why the heck does this feel tight on me? Okay, well, let me pull up True Crime while I get something situated so I can test the fit again. It'll also give people time to come into the live stream. Where's that True Crime we started? And didn't get very far. There it is.
We have confirmed that he has committed 22 total murders. That's when I realized we were dealing with a serial killer, cold-blooded serial killer.
So how did a serial killer, who for the last 20 years managed to escape police, get put behind bars because of a 10-year-old girl? As Crystal slowly recovers from her neck injury, she regains the ability to talk and can finally share her side of the story.
Alright, I'll get started here in a sec.
3 a.m. Crystal is fast asleep after a night of laughter with Kate.
We went to bed kind of late, but I remember I woke up to like a scream.
She notices that the light is on, laying silent at the top of a bunk bed. She looks around, confused.
I could see at the end of the bed this scary guy. He had scruffy hair, long, dark, curly hair, and a big, scary, long, bushy beard that just took over his whole face, and then his eyes were just dark and mean.
The man doesn't notice that Crystal is awake, but she can see the man is holding Kate and that he has a knife.
He had a hand on her mouth and the knife on her neck, and she's looking at me.
Kate then screams out to Crystal to go get
All right.
her mom. At that moment, the man drives his knife across Kate's neck, dropping her to the floor.
I can test this now.
Again and again.
I heard Katie at the bottom of the bed on the floor. She was like gasping for air and choking. She couldn't breathe.
Crystal is horrified, but she's quiet, careful not to make a sound. She wants to help her friend, but if she moves, the man will kill her. After a moment, the man walks out of the room.
About to shut off the light, and he looked one last time. And he noticed that I was there.
Tommy Linsells has already made a victim. He doesn't hesitate when he sees that frightened girl on the top bunk. He closes the door and walks back to her side.
I was trying to scoot to the right side of the bed because he was on the left. He just reached over and cut my throat.
Without hesitation, Crystal drops to the floor and plays dead. She's praying that the man won't come back and
Alright.
check if she's alive.
This still feels like a bit of a tight fit. I might have to adjust it.
Still.
I just remember laying there and the light turning off and I heard the door shut. So I got on my hands and knees and I was crawling across the floor in the bedroom and I came across Katie. She was kind of making a gasping noise, or maybe she was choking. But then I was trying to comfort her. I laid next to her, rubbing her back, and that's when I realized I couldn't talk because all I wanted to say was everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be okay, but I couldn't.
Then Kate goes quiet. With her friend dying in her arms, Crystal realizes she could be next.
I had this feeling, get out of here, get up, come on, go. I was laying there thinking, has he been to the other rooms? Does he know that the whole family's here? Is everybody here? Are they all dead?
Crystal decides to head
Now I'm
outside
stuck.
to find
Yeah, I
Kate
need to
and
make
close
this
his
bigger.
house. Before Before she opens the door,
It's a
she hears
perfect
car
fit,
drive off.
and that's a
There's no
problem.
way to know if it's the man who killed
I
her.
don't really want to put a
She
zipper in
has to
this.
take the risk.
It was dark outside. I was in my pajamas, no shoes, nothing. I saw a light in the distance. I was like, that's my goal. That's where I need to be. I just got on the road.
So I'm gonna
walked
seam
really
rip
slow to that
these
light.
sides
Really,
and put
all
a
I could
little
think about
more
was, just get to this house, just get to this house,
distance,
just get to
because
this
I
house.
also need the armholes to be a little bit
And I
bigger.
just banged on their door, and I hear a gentleman. He's like, "Who's there? Who's there?" And I can't talk, so I'm just banging as hard as I can on the door.
I have a little girl just rang my doorbell.
Crystal is begging the man to tell the operator that the Harris family needs help, but all she can do is write while holding a hand to her throat. She writes for them to hurry, that her neck needs help. And to the man she writes, "Will I live?" January 2nd, Crystal is at the hospital, relieved that Tommy Lynn Sells is behind bars, but her nightmare isn't
I need
over
reading
yet.
glasses, that
In
might
less
help.
than 9 months, she will have to face him in court, because her testimony is crucial to the case, to make sure Tommy Lynn Sells never hurts anyone else ever again. And she's terrified of what might happen. Will she be able to go through with her testimony? If she fails, he might be released. And who knows what Sells will do when he sees her in the courtroom. Like in the case of Mary Stauffer, who was kidnapped by her stalker, he attacked her with a knife in court and left a mark on her face. In the weeks before the trial, the television show America's Most Wanted covers Kate and Crystal's story, and they arrange for Crystal to meet with another teen who went through something very similar.
And he strangled me. He slit both my wrists. You can barely see them, thank God, they're going away. And then he slit my throat.
Christy Reed had survived a brutal attack in 1999 when she got home from school. The brave young 14-year-old then stood in court to face the man who also killed her 16-year-old sister.
I asked them not to be in the courtroom, but they couldn't do it unless he said something bad or, looked at me weird. Yeah, I'm way scared because he's going to be sitting right there.
During the encounter, Crystal notices the little gold ring that Christy is wearing. It was this ring that gave Christy strength when she testified in court, as a reminder of her sister.
Do you have any tips or anything? Your friend's name is Katie? Yeah. Concentrate on her because you're helping her and yourself. It's scary, but once you get it out, you feel a lot better.
It's September 12th, 9 months after the attack. The trial begins for Tommy Lynn Sells.
Let me have the defendant rise and face the jury, and I'll ask.
The day I had to testify, I said, "Mom, don't cry. Please don't cry. If I see you in the crowd bawling, you're going to distract me. You're going to make me upset."
11-year-old Crystal Searles was going to be the key witness, the star witness for the prosecution. She had never seen Tommy Lynn Sells since the night that he came to that house and slashed her throat, and she didn't know how she was going to react.
The jury is presented with extremely emotional testimony, while Tommy Lynn Sells remains indifferent.
What I was told was an intruder had entered the premises, and my daughter was gone.
They discovered that it was my own daughter who was in the house. I just cried and cried.
Soon, it will be Crystal's turn to tell the jury what she went through, with Sells just a few feet away from her. Moments before she has to go to the courtroom, a surprise is delivered directly to Crystal to help her through her last struggle.
And I'm to tell you that this is to help guide you, okay?
Inside, she finds the cross ring that Christy was wearing, the same ring she wore in court.
As you face this journey for a moment, you begin. Oh my God, will guide you, and you'll have the strength to win.
And then when they called me down, I was like, I'm ready. They said, "Do you want to walk by him?" You could either walk by him or just walk through this door and get on the stand. And I said, I want to walk by him. I'm not scared of him.
Were you ever awakened during the night?
Yes.
What was it that awakened you?
Katie's voice saying help. His hand was over her mouth.
Whose hand was over her mouth?
His hand.
The man with the blue jacket and the glasses?
Yes.
But the record reflected the witness has identified the defendant, Tommy Lynn Sells.
He was standing behind her with his hand over her mouth. The knife right here. He was.
As Crystal struggles to finish her accounts of that night, the judge gives her a short recess.
Well, that's a good way to get yourself
She's
blocked on
beginning to
my
regret
channel.
it. She knows what might happen to Sells.
I put my thoughts towards Katie. I just had such a mindset that this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I had to do. This is for Katie. She deserves this.
What happened next?
He moved the knife and slit her throat. He started walking towards me.
Did you say anything to him?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
And hello, Nicole, if you're still hanging out. Thank you.
I'd be quiet, I promise. I won't say anything. I'm not making no noises. Katie. He said, move your hand.
I am going to pause this for y'all real quick and explain what happened. I had someone demanding in the comments to see my face. I have no problem with showing my face on social media at this point. However, I am not going to put up with people and their garbage demanding. And I blocked them. So please refrain from doing so. Because I don't take very well to being ordered around. The main point of my live streams is to show what I'm working on. And it is much more about the cosplay and the build and how things are made. And it is not about me. We cool? All right, we're going to keep going.
And why did you take your hands out? Will you show us how you had your hands?
I had him up like this
Tell us why you had your hands up close to your neck.
because I saw what he did to Katie and I was scared he was going to do it to me.
As she struggles to go through with her testimony, she finds comfort in the gift Christy gave her.
He reached over the ledge, took my throat, just laid there, and then I was dead.
Tell us why you did that.
Because if he knew I was alive, he would have came back and killed me for sure.
Well, Crystal, you can stand down, man, and this completes your examination. Thank you, and you are excused.
As soon as I stepped off the stand, I felt so good. I felt like he couldn't conquer me. He had his chance, and now look at him. He was in that trial room because of me, and I liked feeling that power.
After only a few hours of deliberation, the jury quickly comes back with a unanimous verdict.
You, Tommy Lynn Sells, have been found guilty of the offense of capital murder.
They decided to give Tommy Lynn Sells the death penalty.
The serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells, who escaped police for 20 years, is finally brought down. And it's because of one little girl's courage that he will never hurt anyone ever again.
There's not a doubt in my mind that Crystal has lost a lot, if not most of her childhood. She really has been a survivor.
Crystal came face to face with a serial killer and survived. Her road to recovery wasn't an easy one, and she may never fill that gap of losing her best friend. But as the years pass, Crystal is able to find solace in her family and her newfound friends. She's closer than ever with her two sisters.
It's such a beautiful thing to see her with her sisters. Even today, she still is like a mother to them.
She graduated, and every day continues to make her friend Kate proud.
Boy, girl.
Of course, I think about Katie. I think about, if she was here, what would she be doing? Maybe what would we be doing? I don't ever think about Tommy Lancells. I don't ever give him the time of day. It just... It makes me really thankful. That's what he did. He didn't ever bring me down at all. And these are happy tears. I'm just glad to be here.
Crystal Searles is living proof that even after tragedy, there is a life worth living.
I think just that Katie, she helped me through everything. Her soul came up and like stayed with me.
I took a couple pictures and just want to verify with you.
Let's get a new true crime up. Do we have any requests from the audience of which channel for true crime? Oh, she just posted 3 hours ago.
We know the road brings us back to
We'll do more Call Me
Meet
Chris.
the Reputation 2. Our
It started with a message from an old name she hadn't heard in years. Unsettling at first, then threatening. And whoever this was knew things only someone watching her could know. And she sensed how this might end, so she documented everything and went to authorities. But what happened next would shock and horrify everyone. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and...
Oh, I think I watched this
things
police
I
cam
wanted
already.
to. And I know you do too, you sick, twisted, beautiful, intellectually minded freak. Today we are hopping into a case with plot twist after plot twist. So without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this plot twist case together. Before we get into the video, let's talk about rent for a second.
No thanks, I'm
Because
good.
if you're a rent, and that's where, and every, you can even put, so whether you like restaurants, so join the Crystal Krug Grimsrud was born in Boulder, Colorado on November 24th, 1980. And she was raised by her parents, Lars and Linda Grimsrud, who saw that she demonstrated exceptional talents from a very young age. She loved the arts and nurturing her creative instincts. And she also excelled in school, particularly in math and science. In bonding with her father in early childhood, she worked closely with Lars consistently through hands-on projects. Because Lars was a retired aerospace engineer, and she would spend countless hours working on classic cars with him in his garage. And it would be their sacred space together, saying, quote, "We'd work on the cars, we'd race the cars. Crystal always felt very comfortable coming over here. If we needed to talk or whatever, this is where we would sit and just enjoy each other's company," unquote, Lars would later recall. And their connection through the hobby brought their relationship very close together. And as Linda described, Crystal, quote, "loved to just get out and live life," unquote. And she grew up with an adventurous spirit that was well-rounded with her dedication to studies. And where she was equally at home performing dance routines on stage or at home reading chemistry books, the balance between her creativity and intelligence served her very well. And her excellence in maths and sciences earned Crystal an academic scholarship to the Colorado School of
Just cover the whole
Science, where she
iPad. There we go.
pursued a degree in biochemical engineering. And she then transferred to the University of Colorado at Boulder, where she would finish that pursuit, graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Biochemical Engineering. Oh my God, she's really smart. And right alongside her academic achievements, Crystal was deeply passionate for dance and performing arts, as if she wasn't already impressive enough. And she had graced many stages throughout her life, effortlessly impressing anyone that got the chance to see her beautiful performances. And her loved ones recall her ability to just light up a stage, as well as any room she might enter. And after graduating from college, she began a successful career at 19 years old at Agilent Technologies, and she would work on the project management team and was well known for her creative energy and technical excellence. And colleagues would describe Crystal as a very valuable member to their project management team. So she clearly stood out in her field and made a bold impression. And even later on in life, in the midst of juggling a successful career and family, she encouraged her children to pursue artistic endeavors as well, while maintaining
That was a
her
little
own
too
creative
much.
hobbies. But before the success and family life with kids, shortly after high school and into the beginning of college, Crystal had her first serious boyfriend, and his name was Jack Anthony Holland. And they dated for about a year, breaking up in the fall of 2000. And Anthony had always been a, quote, very friendly, very courteous, he always had good manners, unquote, which left a generally positive impression upon Crystal's family, as Linda would recall. But as time passed after their breakup, he periodically tried to come back into Crystal's life, kind of out of the blue. And he initially contacted her in 2002, and despite her apparent lack of interest, he didn't take the hint. And he got in touch again in 2005 and 2010 via Facebook messages in an attempt to rekindle their love. Dude, back the f up. But he just wouldn't take no for an answer, regardless of how she consistently rejected his advances. Quote, he's like, we're meant to be together, she would later recall, describing how persistent he was. So by 2016, that persistence had begun to raise some alarm when he, yet again, reached out to Crystal. And at this point, she firmly told him, quote, this is really creepy for me, you need to stop, unquote. She had finally had enough and decided
If
to
I can find the other
end
end of the skirt, there we go.
To stop these advances, Crystal deleted her Facebook account, and it seemed to work for her. So finally, she had a bit of peace. So in the mid-2000s, Crystal met Daniel Krug, a respectable man who was building a career in government service, and his stability and desire for a family drew her close to him. And the two fell in love, and Crystal and Daniel seemingly had a really bright future ahead of them. Because Crystal continued to balance her engineering work and passions, and Dan worked for the state at the Department of Public Health and Environment in Glendale. And their relationship moved quickly, and by 2007, they were married and ready to start a family. So their 16-year marriage brought them 3 kids. And as of 2023, they were approximately 14 years old, 11 years old, and 8 years old. And the family would settle into Broomfield, Colorado, where they were part of a comfortable upscale community. And Crystal was a very devoted mother, pouring her time and energy into her kids' happiness and well-being. And she shared her love for the arts with her 2 daughters and helped foster her son's growing interest in technology. And both her and Daniel worked hard at their jobs and the family. So outwardly and inwardly, they had built a loving home and life together, with secure careers and well-adjusted kids. But after a while, Crystal and Daniel started to struggle a bit, and their marriage had begun to kind of fall apart. And Daniel admitted that they were no longer sleeping in the same bedroom and had said he wanted to file divorce. And Crystal would confide in her family that she was kind of feeling the same way. So she had started looking into divorce attorneys and intended to seek full custody of the kids when she did. But despite their marital troubles, the two maintained appearances publicly and for the children, which was
Right, we're
necessary
getting
for the
there. We've almost
situation
made
they
it all the way
found
around.
themselves caught up in. So on October 2nd, 2023, Crystal received a strange text from Anthony on an unfamiliar number, Anthony being her old boyfriend that was super clingy and crazy. And he said he'd be visiting the Boulder area and boldly asked if Crystal wanted to hook up. And she was startled because it hadn't been years since she had heard from him. And with her Facebook account no longer active, she thought she had put this chapter of her life behind her. And still having no desire to reconnect, Crystal ignored the message. And the next day, she was hit with several more new messages. But their tone quickly escalated, reaching a hostile and vulgar level. So sensing that she was ignoring him, Anthony said, quote, you should keep yourself, don't waste my time, unquote.
Ooh, that boy
My
has
God.
issues.
So this shift in seriousness greatly concerned Crystal. And as Detective Andrew Martinez, who would soon look into this specific case, noted, quote, it's a pretty extreme reaction reaction to not getting a response, unquote. So Crystal was on edge because this first contact had been alarming because, quote, he's never said this kind of stuff to me before, unquote, as she later admitted. And it felt as if she was suddenly targeted out of nowhere, and she now had a stalker. But the nightmare was only beginning. So as weeks passed, the harassment only grew more intense. And what started as an unwanted reconnection attempt had become a full-blown stalking campaign. And Crystal began to receive what felt like an unending wave of concerning messages and emails.
All right, let's
just
see.
steadily becoming more and more menacing by the day. And notably, the emails were coming from the address ahollandkicks@gmail.com. And this led to them jokingly calling Anthony Kickman in an attempt to lighten the rather heavy situation.
Iron
But soon their
time.
threats became more pointed, and not just towards her, but now also towards Daniel. The email warned, quote, I'll get rid of him and then we can be together, unquote. And another taunted, quote, you don't want him, I know you want me, unquote. And fears were heightened by Kickman's somehow intimate knowledge of their lives. As one message read, quote, saw you at dentist, see you soon. Oh my God, it's so creepy. And Crystal had actually just been to a dentist appointment, confirming that he had been watching her. And in another instance, the stalker commented on the expired registration stickers on her license plate, further suggesting he was watching the vehicle. And disturbing photographs were soon sent showing Daniel getting out of his car at work. So this just cemented that the stalker was fixated on both of them. And who knew if the children would be next at this point? So everybody was really on edge. So Crystal now believed their entire family was under threat.
Whoop.
So
Let's
heading
not
into
cover up
November,
Chris.
She was exhausted and constantly looking over her shoulder. Quote, it has definitely made me paranoid everywhere I go, unquote, she would later recall. Because seemingly there was something new every single day. The stalker was relentless, leaving her to fear that, quote, every corner presents some sort of danger, unquote. As Detective Martinez described,
I'll have to get more
Kickman
water
seemed
for
to be
this
everywhere
iron in a bit.
everything. But Crystal refused to just let this go without a fight. And from early on, she took proactive steps to go against the stalker's crusade. So to try to create some order from the chaos, she thoroughly logged each incident, creating a stalker log, because she's insanely smart, including every relevant detail from her encounters with Kickman. And after she received the photo of Daniel at work and a subsequent conversation with her father, Crystal went to the police on November 7th to share her findings. And she met with Detective Martinez, who was assigned to her case and recalled that she, quote, just kind of took over, unquote, the interview room, laying out everything that had happened so far. So Detective Martinez was very impressed by her record keeping. Quote, the stalker log included everything, dates, times, locations, follow-up points, unquote. And Crystal did everything she could to express her fears while staying analytically grounded to explain the situation. Quote, I keep trying to remind myself this is intending to be terrorizing. This is intending to scare me.
Twilio can take weeks to get your A to P 10 DLC campaigns approved. It's because they go through 3 different steps. They go through an internal Twilio review.
So her proactive approach demonstrated the severity of the situation to law enforcement. And with her detailed files, authorities were now looking into the case. But even then, she wouldn't just sit back and wait. So ever determined to find her stalker, Crystal hired a private investigator as well, hoping to find where Anthony was. And she and Daniel installed security cameras around the house to catch any suspicious behavior as well. And she also decided to arm herself. As the situation became more serious, her father insisted that she carry one of his guns for protection, saying, quote, she was scared.
Oh, they didn't blur the G word that time.
Enough, you need to start carrying, but you'll use one of my guns for right now, unquote. Lars would recount. And she earned a concealed carry permit and took firearm safety classes. So Crystal was motivated to do everything she possibly could to keep her family safe, even in a time of extreme uncertainty. Let's take a moment to talk about something I love. All right, that's furniture. I'm a furniture gal. I'm a sucker for some nice place to, if that makes any sense. I bought, and I'm all about. They have beautifully, and I really like them. And the quality furniture, and plus just visit Article for $50 off. Thank you so much to Article for sponsoring the video and supporting the channel. Let's get back to it. So the stalker situation had soon taken over the whole household, and the Krug family lived in constant fear and unease. And they were all drawn into this as targets or collateral. And Detective Martinez saw how spooked Daniel was, just like Crystal. And the kids were now aware of what was going on. So it was very intense because an outside maniac threatened their very lives. And the Broomfield police recognized this was more than just a routine stalking complaint. And so they increased their vigilance, and patrols were heightened, and undercover officers kept watch on the home. And the psychological stress on Crystal and Daniel was unfathomable. And texts and emails came at all hours of the day, so naturally they were jumpy and were required to be on constant alert. And Daniel would recount, quote, "I went to the grocery store briefly on Tuesday, and someone behind me dropped a can, and I panicked. So what am I doing? I'm panicking, and I'm doing a shit job of protecting my wife. So I'm not doing good," unquote. So their everyday lives were stripped of their normal routines and replaced with precautions. And in late November, Crystal shared a very dark thought with her sister Jenna and brother Josh. And she said she could feel a violent end approaching, saying, quote, "It's either going to be me or him that's dead, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it's not me," unquote. So as Crystal desperately sought help, the official investigation struggled to progress because obtaining information from tech companies proved to be painstakingly slow. And Detective Martinez was tasked with filing search warrants and subpoenas to get the necessary data on the phone numbers and emails that the stalker was using, such as IP addresses and account info. But weeks passed with no useful response, because sometimes these big tech companies will take their sweet ass time and or push back on providing requested information. Why? I don't know, because they're big asshole tech companies. But Detective Martinez admitted that the necessary information was being slow-walked even as the stalking continued. So by mid-November, Crystal's private investigator had discovered that Anthony was actually living in Eagle Mountain, Utah, and she emphatically delivered the news to Detective Martinez. Yet, to her surprise, he chose not to contact Anthony directly at that point in time. And he explained that ideally he wanted to have enough digital evidence and an arrest warrant in hand before confronting him. Because from his perspective, if they went to Anthony without the necessary proof, it could make the situation worse or cause him to flee. Saying, quote, "I explained to Crystal that we wanted to gather as much evidence as possible and ideally obtain an arrest warrant, so when law enforcement does go to Anthony's door, we can take him into custody and not have to walk away," unquote. So with no arrest or identification of Kickman, Crystal grew more and more frustrated with authorities as December arrived. At this point, she was just feeling helpless and worried that the case may not have been the priority she once thought. Quote, she made the comment that she felt they had abandoned her, that they weren't doing things aggressively enough, unquote. Lars, her father, would later recall of the situation. So waiting at the mercy of the bureaucracy was agonizing for her. And Linda remembers that Crystal just broke down. Quote, "It was just heartbreaking. She was just in tears. What am I going to do? How am I going to live?" Unquote. And she felt like time was just running out. And sadly, she would be right. So December 14th began like any other Thursday for the Krugs. Crystal got the kids ready for the day as usual and went to drop off 2 of her 3 children to school. And she returned just before 8 a.m. to get ready to start her own day. And Daniel took the 3rd child to the bus stop before heading to work. So all appeared to be pretty normal. Quote, "Mornings are very routine in this house," as Daniel later described. But on his commute to work, Daniel received a text message from Crystal asking if he could pick up one of the kids after school. And he responded asking what time he needed to be there, but she didn't respond. And he didn't think too much of it at first, but as he sent a few more texts throughout the morning, something was definitely off. And it wasn't like her to go silent mid-conversation. So Crystal's silence had become legitimately worrisome to Daniel. And at around noon, he tried calling her, but he got no answer. And his concern reached the point that he was compelled to call the Broomfield Police Department's non-emergency line and request a welfare checkup.
At Raising Cane's, we focus on making the most critical chicken finger meals, getting them right every time.
Ready? 3, 2. And it worked.
Her. And his voice appeared very anxious but focused on the recorded call. Quote, I don't think this is an emergency, but this feels really weird.
My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
And Officer John O'Hare was dispatched to the Krug household, arriving at approximately 12:28 p.m. And he knocked on the front door, but no one answered, leading him to have a look around the premises. And as he peered into the garage window, he saw a horrifying sight, because he would see a woman was lying on the garage floor, apparently lifeless with visible head injuries.
151, send medical. I got a female down in the garage.
So O'Hare urgently reported in, requesting backup and medical assistance. And when they got there, they would force entry and discover it was indeed Crystal. And unfortunately, she would have no pulse and had blunt force trauma and a stab wound on her chest. And she would be pronounced dead at 12:43 p.m. And police taped off the house, because it was now a crime scene. So upon hearing the news that something was wrong at the home, Daniel left work and raced back to get there. And when he arrived, police informed him that his wife had been found dead. And he would collapse in utter pain, crying uncontrollably in the driveway as responders held him back from the scene. And victim advocate Heather Aids described,
it's a weird feeling standing there when somebody's being told, I'm sorry, but your loved one has died.
So she guided him to the patrol car and comforted him by rubbing his back. And through his tears, Daniel's first clear concern was for his kids.
In the car, he was pretty focused on the kids. He was very adamant about wanting to be the one to tell his children.
So amidst the chaos and confusion, he insisted that he had to be the one to tell the kids what had happened. And authorities took Daniel down to the station, both for his own comfort and also to gather whatever information that could help to catch the killer. Quote, this man has been going through a stalking case with his wife, and now she is gone, unquote. And it appeared that Kickman had finally made good on his threats and took Crystal out once and for all. And once Daniel had calmed down, they spoke to him for his statement. And he described the routine morning. They got the kids to school, and she seemed fine when he left for work. And he told of the text message she sent him and how odd it was that she never responded, and eventually that led to the welfare check call. And though distraught, he cooperated in every way he could, answering questions and providing ideas as to what may have happened. And he said that Crystal was a fighter and she had to have struggled with the intruder. He just simply seemed to be trying to pick up the pieces that remained from this awful outcome. So with Crystal deceased and the known history of a stalking ex, authorities immediately focused on
All
locating
right,
the
time to
victim.
stitch this
Detective
down.
Martinez later admitted, quote, my initial assumption was that Anthony
I'm trying to give it as clean of a rolled hem as I can.
murdered her, unquote. And Broomfield police contacted authorities in Utah to find and bring Anthony in for questioning. And that afternoon, Eagle Mountain police showed up at his doorstep, and he was at home watching TV when he heard several bangs on his front door. And he opened it to find 8 officers standing before him, and they immediately treated him as a suspect, asking him,
Have you ever heard of the name Crystal Krug?
and he admitted that
That was my very first girlfriend ever.
and the officers didn't reveal why they were there, but Anthony thought they were going to arrest him. Quote, I honestly thought I was going to jail for something, unquote. But he would say that he didn't even know for what. So they continued asking where he had been that day and if he could prove his whereabouts. And fortunately for him, he had an alibi. And only a few hours earlier, he had been shopping at a Kohl's near his home. And he had a receipt showing a timestamp of 12:16 p.m. on December 14th for a green sweatshirt.
What'd you buy? A sweatshirt, this one right here. The purchase was made at 12:16 p.m.
And with Crystal's murder taking place around 8 a.m. that morning, there was no way that Anthony could have killed her and made the 8-hour return trip back to Utah by noon. And he went even further to provide employment records verifying that he had still been clocking in for work during the alleged stalking time frame. And after police cross-checked the claims, they told him he was free to go and wished him a better day. And though great news for Anthony, it left several unanswered questions for the situation back in Broomfield. It was back to square one now. So now that their prime suspect for months, including the stalker, had been eliminated, Broomfield authorities had to pivot quickly, and investigators wasted no time gathering any forensic and digital evidence that they could. And while examining the house, they discovered that several of the home cameras had been turned off, and one had been covered with blue masking tape, which led them to check in with the neighbors in hopes that nearby cameras may have caught something. And since this case had turned into a homicide, Detective Randy Pillock, a digital forensic examiner, was able to fast-track
Might help if I
requests
plug it in.
previously made by Detective Martinez to tech companies for information on the accounts in question. And despite being so slow before, they were magically able to provide
There we go.
all of the desired information within an hour. Starting to think this could have saved her life if they were quicker before, but who's to say? But the first big break was with the email records. And the IP logs showed that 2 of the email accounts used to harass Crystal were sent from the same IP address. And that address being the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
Both came back to the same IP address. That IP address was the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
None other than Daniel's workplace, her husband's workplace. And one of the email accounts had even been created on a secure network at the department. So this discovery hit the investigative team hard. And unexpectedly, they were now faced with the possibility that Crystal's stalker may already be sitting right in front of them. So detectives confronted Daniel in the interrogation room where he was sitting in front of them. And still clinging to his original theory, he replied, and when they told him that Anthony had an airtight alibi and could not have been the killer or person sending the messages, he was stunned.
At Wells Fargo, we get it. Alice started her business because she loves facades.
Because if it wasn't Anthony and the real killer was still out there, then he still feared for the lives of his remaining family. And at this point, detectives observed that Daniel's body language dramatically changed. As he went from his former slouched over depressive posture to
took a defensive posture. He sat back in the couch a little bit. He crossed his arms, kind of like, I have nothing to explain.
And in a moment, he had transformed from sorrowful to on guard. And Detective Jennifer King Sullivan noted that as soon as suspicion seemed to creep towards him, he became careful and unemotional, as she imagined Dan's head spinning, thinking about what else are they gonna find? Because did Daniel know more than he was letting on? And Detective King Sullivan asked,
if you were watching these facts unfold in front of you in a movie, what would you say happened?
And his evasive answer did little to convince them, but they still needed more, and they'd have to let him go until they could get it. So as the digital evidence was poured over, more and more incriminating details were discovered, and financial records would show that several burner phones had been purchased with a Visa card, and that card was traced and registered under Daniel Krug. And furthermore, the location data from one of those disposable phones showed that it had been present in the same locations, directly alongside Daniel's personal cell phone multiple times. Guys, getting it. Thank God, though. And the forensic tech team also examined the stalker photo of Daniel in his work parking lot that was sent to Crystal. And after a much closer look, it was determined that the photo had actually been taken by a phone that was in selfie mode using a timer. Guy was taking selfies of himself in a parking lot. Oh my God. And the phone had just been propped up on the back of his car next to his. And Daniel had taken it himself to make it seem like someone was watching him, which is kind of insane in and of itself, looking at the photo itself, because in hindsight it seems so obvious, but I digress. And after digging into the home security logs, they discovered that Crystal's phone had been used to disable the system at 8:15 a.m. And the team at the house determined that the blue masking tape used to cover the Ring doorbell camera had originated from the Krug's kitchen. Gotta get them to buy masking tape, I guess. And next, they discovered that the suspicious text messages sent from Crystal's phone that morning had actually been scheduled ahead of time. Stupid. And Crystal's phone data showed that messages had been drafted and sent on a delayed timer to send later in the morning. And Pillock explained, quote, "We believe Crystal was already deceased by the time that they were sent." and at least 3 messages went out from Crystal's phone in this way. One to Daniel asking about picking up the kids, and then one each to Crystal's father or brother, and to Detective Martinez. And the messages appeared to be a way for Daniel to give himself an alibi, as they were sent at 8:56 a.m. after he had already left the house. And Daniel's movements that morning were also suspicious. The neighborhood camera footage saw Dan leaving his house at 8:24 a.m., which was about 30 minutes later than he normally did. And in addition to disabling and disrupting the cameras at his home, Daniel deactivated his car's dash cam on the way to work, where he would arrive around 9:27 a.m. And last, but certainly not least, Daniel's search history revealed that he had asked Google some particularly concerning questions.
Internet searches like, what happens when you're knocked unconscious? Do people really go unconscious when you get in the head? How hard can it try to go unconscious?
And quote, how do I kill my wife and get away with it? Unquote. Just kidding. That last one was me, but might as well be, you know? Like, this guy is scum. Stupid ass scum. Oh my God, I feel like so bad for Crystal and her kids and her family and stuff. I can't believe the audacity of this. So obviously these questions aren't criminal on their own, but in the context of the current situation, it doesn't look too good for Daniel. But as the prosecution would later highlight, quote, all searches were the day before the murder, and was rather Daniel. And Daniel had essentially researched the exact way that Crystal would end up dead the next morning. And the fact that these questions were searched the night before demonstrated proof of premeditation, aka first-degree murder. That's a brief moment to talk about.
And we're gonna take a moment.
My fave mulberry silk, breathable, and hypoallergenic, which means it's way gentler on your skin and hair than cotton or even satin. Because with him, very temperamental, love that it's, and because SSWAT, the Broomfield detectives felt that they had enough evidence to move against Daniel, and they quietly acquired a warrant for his arrest, charging him with the murder and related stalking of his wife, Crystal. But given the rather elaborate means of deception that he had pulled off up to this point, authorities were cautious to keep him from fleeing or harming himself once he realized that they truly knew it was him. So that day, a team of officers surveilled Daniel's movements with around 8 unmarked cars, and eventually went to a grocery store, where the team followed his vehicle into the parking lot. And they felt that this was their shot, saying, quote, we wait for him to park, and we open the verge on this car, quote, Detective King Sullivan would later recount. So officers with guns drawn ordered Daniel to step out of his car, and he was completely caught by surprise. They pull him out and handcuff him on the spot, placing him under arrest for the murder of Crystal. And bystanders would watch in shock as this seemingly ordinary man was dragged away by police. But Detective Martinez confronts Daniel with a final question.
Well, it's not accused that you killed their mother, or do you want somebody else to?
Listen.
Oh, the sass behind that. Oh, so sassy.
And fill it with new ideas. Find ways to simplify and beautify. Live your day with
No
more
puckering.
sunlight and more room for new moves. Welcome to the new moves
There we go.
of Brookfield.
That, in the most respectful way, that man is a hero, Detective Martinez. That is a movie moment you into this monster's face, and I appreciate Detective Martinez so much for saying that. Just a punch right in the gut after Daniel's adamant demanding that he be the one to tell the kids of Crystal's death. And Daniel did not answer the question, shocking. Instead, saying he wanted to talk with his lawyer and then went silent. Daniel Krug was now in custody and accused of being Crystal's stalker and Crystal's killer. So once Daniel had been arrested, detectives and prosecutors worked to lay out the full story they had uncovered. And it was abundantly clear that Daniel had orchestrated the entire stalking campaign against Crystal. He secretly posed as Anthony Holland starting in early October of 2003, sending those texts and emails through burner phones and fake
Ran out of
accounts.
bobbin.
And every threat from Kickman had come from the man living in Crystal's own house, and likely even taunting her from the same room at times. But why? What possessed him to do something so awful to the people he cared about? And investigators believe his motive was born from desperation and a desire to control the situation slowly slipping from his hands. Miss Crystal wanted a divorce, and Daniel couldn't live with that, so he created a plan to terrorize her into staying with him, and he had hoped that pretending to be a menacing ex that Crystal would fear for her life and need to lean on him for support and protection, thus reconsidering her desire to leave him. Just a pathetic attempt. And as the prosecution later put it, Daniel decided to play puppet master to win her back. And it was an insanely
Need
elaborate
another
way
bobbin.
to gaslight and control Crystal.
Let's see.
And for weeks, the plan played out,
Not in there.
but not the way that Daniel had hoped. And instead of leaning on him, Crystal remained guarded and even suspicious, at one point saying to Daniel, quote, "I can't rule you out as the stalker," unquote. So this, added on with authorities closing in on the truth
the
of
bobbin out of
Stalker's
here.
identity, made Daniel realize his time was almost up. And once he had
Bobbin.
become convinced that Crystal was truly going to leave him, and further that he feared he could be exposed as the stalker, he chose to end her life instead. Quote, "She was putting the pieces together and he was running out of time," unquote, said senior DA Kate Armstrong. Basically, if he couldn't have her, then nobody else could. So Daniel finalized his plan on the evening of December 13th, as seen from his Google searches. And the following morning, he went about the usual routine, pretending everything was normal as Crystal left to take the kids to school. And at some point, he took one of his daughters to the bus stop, and when Crystal returned and pulled into the garage around 8 a.m., he was waiting for her, and he struck her in the head with a blunt object, giving her 2 or 3 skull fractures and rendering her unconscious,
There
or
it
at
is.
least defenseless. And then he stabbed her above the heart, which would kill her. And Daniel proceeded to stage the aftermath of the crime scene. And he would disable the cameras, and he would cover up the Ring doorbell camera, and he prepped the drafted texts for his alibi, and then he cleaned up and left for work like nothing happened, like the monster that he is. And he then periodically texted and then called Crystal's phone to further support his shitty alibi. But all in all, Daniel just desired to own Crystal, and when she tried to break free, he chose to destroy her rather than let her live her life. And as DA Brian Mason would later say, quote, "In planning and executing this horrific crime, Daniel Krug terrorized his wife, his children, and an innocent man, all in order to control and then murder a woman who no longer wanted to be with him," unquote. And she paid for his insecurity with her life. But she actually wasn't the first one to suffer from his tactics. And as investigators took a deeper look into Daniel's past, they discovered that this was not the only time that he had stalked a partner. And a former girlfriend of Daniel's came forward with her story. And when she broke up with Daniel in the 1990s, he employed tactics that eerily matched the tactics used against Crystal. And as authorities noted, he allegedly created fake online personas to send her harassing messages. And this went on for months. Unfortunately, she was never actually physically harmed, and thus Daniel wasn't criminally charged. But her account established a pattern of obsessive controlling behavior that seemed to be established well before he even met Crystal. And it looked like Daniel had this dark tendency all along, hidden underneath his otherwise normal appearance. So Daniel was formally charged with multiple felonies, including first-degree murder, 2 counts of stalking, and criminal impersonation. And each charge was, of course, very serious, with the murder charge alone carrying a life sentence. And he pleaded not guilty to all counts, like that. He was saying he was falsely accused and sticking to his "someone else must have done it" story. But by April 2025, it was time for the trial by jury in Broomfield County District Court. And during the trial, the defense pointed to the lack of direct physical evidence in an attempt to sow doubt, because there were technically no fingerprints or DNA, and they argued of Daniel's that were conclusively found at the murder or even on
Now I have
Crystal's
to
body.
flip
And
that
furthermore,
him
the
over
murder
one more
weapons, the
time.
blunt object and the sharp object were never
Dime. Healthy, beautiful skin for every you.
Got a huge problem this morning. I think the drain is clogged. AAA service is going to be here in about an hour.
recovered, which the defense claimed was another factor supporting an unknown assailant. And the defense also pointed out that there was a partial DNA profile from the crime that did not match Daniel's, and none of Daniel's blood was found on his clothing or in his car or anywhere associated with the crime. Quote, "There's absolutely no physical evidence on Mr. Krug's clothing. There's no blood found on the car inside or out. It's searched 3 times," unquote. And defense attorney Philip Giegel argued to the jury that his daughter even confirmed that the clothes he wore later on were the same that he had dropped her off with at the bus that morning. And the defense continued by attacking the police investigation, claiming it to be sloppy. The defense lawyer Joe Morales even went so far as to label Detective Martinez as lazy and incompetent, arguing that the whole thing was mishandled from the beginning. And he noted that police didn't fingerprint Crystal's phone to confirm the scheduled texts. And without the forensic proof, they could never be 100% sure. Just glazing over all the IP address stuff, but okay. But the prosecution, on the other hand, led by Deputy DAs Stephanie Fritz and Kate Armstrong, introduced the mountain of digital and circumstantial evidence tying Daniel to the crime piece by piece. And they took the jury through the whole story. Daniel's motives, desperation for control, the fake emails tied to his IP at work, the burner phones following his phone, and the gift card in his name used to purchase them, and the staged selfie on a timer, which is so embarrassing, and the security system being disabled from Crystal's phone, and the delayed text to establish his own alibi, his Google searches from the night before, and they even had Daniel's former girlfriend testify to the stalking that she endured, showing that this was his character and not a one-off scenario. And all the points laid out in such a fashion painted a pretty clear picture, and not one that was in favor of dumbass Daniel. And the trial would last a little over 2 weeks, and finally it was time for the jury to deliberate. And they did so for about a day and a half, returning with a verdict on April 17th, 2025. And the jury foreperson stood before the court, and Daniel Krug was found guilty on all counts.
Please rise for the jury. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of count number 2, stalking, extreme emotional distress.
Guilty, 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 guilty. And at that point, I think I started breathing again.
And other family members in attendance shared the sentiment. And when they were interviewed later, the jurors said the digital evidence was so overwhelming that they had no doubt he was guilty. And Broomfield Chief of Police, Ania Hempelman, praised the investigative team and expressed gratitude to the jury, saying, quote, "I am extremely pleased with the verdict and proud of everyone who came together to make this trial a success." Jurors agreed the evidence and testimony against Daniel Krug was both conclusive and damning. While we know it won't bring Crystal back to her family and friends, we hope it closes a painful chapter in their lives, unquote. And though it, indeed, would not bring Crystal back, her mother, Linda, spoke of how at least life can go on now, saying, quote, "Every day is a difficult day. You wake up and you feel the pain, and then you just try to go on with your day," unquote. So now, given a first-degree murder conviction, Daniel faced a life sentence in prison. And on April 18th, Judge Priscilla Lowe officially sentenced Daniel to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 9.5 years for the stalking and criminal impersonation to be served consecutively. So Daniel would never be free again. And he was 44 years old at sentencing, meaning he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But that didn't stop Daniel from continuing his proclaim to his innocence. And he even wrote to ABC's 2020, insisting that he, quote, "will fight this wrongful conviction on appeal," unquote. He was simply a man unjustly accused, and he played the part well. And on recorded calls from his time in jail after the verdict, he was heard complaining that the prosecution, quote, "never produced a single piece of hard evidence," unquote, against him. And that his family needed to stick by him because the real killer was still out there, somewhere. And he would plead for sympathy, sounding depressed more often than not, desperate for anyone to side with him as he suffered. And eventually, Daniel's brother Jeremy confronted him on one of the calls, saying, quote, "support is dwindling. You know, Mom and Dad won't believe you very much. I want to believe you very much. There's a lot that's come out. And as imaginative as I can be with finding explanations and ways to theorize how that, you know, this or that could have been, the reality, some of it beyond even my creativity, unquote. So his own family was unable to reconcile what he did when faced with the evidence. I think that says enough. And in the end, Daniel had resorted back to the pattern of lying to his loved ones just as he had lied to everyone else. And Daniel remains imprisoned at the Sterling Correctional Facility in Colorado. Thank God. And in the wake of Crystal's death, a number of glaring failures were exposed in the system, especially the delay in response from tech companies when they received the stalking warrants. And her family, spearheaded by her cousin, Becky Ivanoff, decided to channel their grief into pushing for change. And Becky is a former domestic violence prosecutor and has teamed up with Oregon Representative Kevin Mannix to propose Crystal's Law. And the law aims to protect victims of stalking and domestic violence by speeding up the process in which tech and communication companies work with law enforcement during such cases. And it would force these tech and communication companies to provide requested info from search warrants related to stalking or domestic violence cases within 48 hours. Because in these sorts of cases, time is critical, as any delay could cost a life, as in Crystal's case. And Becky has been extremely vocal about this issue, firmly believing that Crystal's murder would have been prevented had the information been provided. Sooner, saying, quote, "I absolutely believe that Crystal would be alive today because law enforcement would have had the information necessary to arrest her true perpetrator, and she could have made a safety plan for herself to ensure that she was protected," unquote. And this is further supported by the fact that some information from the warrants was not returned until after her death, despite being requested weeks before the murder occurred. And somehow the process that had taken a significant amount of time miraculously was expedited within the hour once the situation had escalated to murder. So this should have been done much, much, much sooner. And Rep. Mannix, alongside Becky, had announced that he is formally introducing Crystal's Law in the Oregon State Legislature this month, which is January 2026. And in addition to compelling companies to act within the 48-hour window, they will also receive civil protection in those circumstances in an effort to remove any reason that those companies would delay in providing the requested information. And they hope that Oregon will be the first to implement the law, setting the precedent for other states to follow or even reaching the federal level. And Becky says, quote, "Crystal did everything right. The system operated as it's currently designed, and she still got killed," unquote. So this legislation is a way to remember and honor Crystal and works to ensure that a situation like this never happens again to anyone else. And I think the work they're doing is absolutely amazing and absolutely honors Crystal. But one of the most devastating parts of the story is that 3 children were left without parents. Their mother being killed by their father, and their father now being in jail for life, and their mother being deceased. Daniel took everything away from them. And after Daniel's arrest, they were taken in by a relative and are being raised by family members who love them. And members of the community have also rallied together in their support, and a local couple even contacted Crystal's relatives to ask if they could raise money to renovate their bedrooms, as they currently were staying in offices and gym spaces. And they got approval, and the kids were ecstatic, so they started a GoFundMe to build each kid's dream bedroom. And another GoFundMe was also started for the kids as a way to help their daily lives, and has since raised over $60,000. And all the proceeds from this video will be going to that fundraiser, and I will also link it down below if you can at all afford to give anything away to this family to help support those children. These endeavors aim to give the kids some comfort and a fresh start. And their grandfather, Lars, has found solace in the loss of his daughters through sharing his passion for cars, as he once did with Crystal. And he brings the kids into his garage workshop, teaching them to work on those classics, just as she did when she was young. Saying, quote, "They run that same electric screwdriver and can tear a carburetor apart," unquote, Lars would say, reflecting on just how much Crystal would have loved to see it, and they honor her memory that way. So that is that for the Crystal Krug case. My heart, as always goes out to the family. Again, if you want to donate to the GoFundMe, I'll link that down below. The proceeds from this video will be going to that GoFundMe 100%. I will also be donating on top of that. And yeah, just stay safe out there. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye.
College is an investment. So let's talk.
All right. Since we haven't had a whole lot of people jump in within the last, I'd say, 10 minutes. Oh, we do have a friend who popped in. Do you want to join us? Because I was going to end it unless you want to hang out. If you hang out with us here, I'll grab another video. Or not. Well, let's go ahead and grab another video and see how it goes.
Planet Earth about to be recycled. Your only chance to evacuate is to leave with us.
It was a final message, a warning, and just a short while afterwards, 39 people would be found dead, all with matching uniforms, the same method of death, and the same Nike shoes. These are the words of Marshall Applewhite, a humble preacher's son who would transform into a supposed extraterrestrial prophet, urging humanity to attain salvation through a spaceship that would take them to the next level. And though it sounds like a made-up story in the world of science fiction, this is the real story of Heaven's Gate. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder, all things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, twisted, beautiful, intellectually minded. And today, we are diving into one of the most infamous cults in history, and that is Heaven's Gate. So without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 to the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this infamous cult.
Before she gets to an ad. Alright, I guess I'm gonna skedaddle. We don't have a whole lot of friends hanging out anymore, and I can go hop over to a different platform and see if anybody wants to hang out over there. Thanks for hanging out for the amount of time you did on YT. Bye-byes!